Last night was the season finale of Chucky Season 3, so I thought it'd be a good chance to rank the previous Chucky movies and seasons from worst to best. So in last place is Seed of Chucky, and this movie is just horrendous. I'm really shocked this got made. A studio even approved this because this movie's an absolute mess. First off, there's way too many scenes involving Chucky's sperm, and I can't believe I'm saying that in a Chucky review. It's ridiculous how much of that's in the movie, and it's just not even funny. There's joke setups that maybe in another movie, maybe with a better script, could have been funny, but they just all fall flat. I watched the movie about a week ago, and I've pretty much forgotten almost everything about it. There was one funny cameo sequence, but besides that, I don't think I laughed once in the movie. There's way too many plot lines, and there's a lot of dumb human ones too, where we don't need to see a plot line about Jennifer Tilly trying to seduce a director of a movie to play the Virgin Mary. That was really dumb. The plot line about her chauffeur being in love with her. The plot line about Glenda being gender fluid. There's plot lines about Chucky and Tiffany that just retread over what we had in Bride of Chucky. And there's a whole kung fu aspect to it in the final fight. It's just really dumb, not fun. It's just pretty much a waste of time. I was incredibly bored watching it, and it doesn't learn the right lessons from Bride of Chucky. Bride of Chucky is a really funny movie, but this movie thinks it should just go all out with that, and it gets rid of any horror, gets rid of all the fun, and it just doesn't understand that you need the horror aspects, but you also need the fun humans too, where the humans in this just, you don't really care what happens to them, and it just is a absolute mess. Would never watch this movie again, would never recommend it, and yeah, I don't think I have much more to say about that. It's a mess. And next up is Cult of Chucky, and same with Seed of Chucky. This one is just really disappointing because the movie that came prior, that it's a direct sequel to, is a really solid Chucky movie, and it set up some good ideas for this movie, but the movie just doesn't do anything with them. The mental hospital side of things is an interesting idea, but where they go with it is just doesn't make any sense. Where they say we're going to this institution and we think it's going to be this really creepy place for Chucky and Nika to be, but in reality, there's like 5 patients in the whole facility. There's like 3 staff members, and it doesn't feel like it's ever a threat. It doesn't feel like us being in this asylum really is another threat. It just feels like this is another place for Chucky to attack, and that's really lame, because if you're going to put Chucky in such a unique atmosphere, you just don't do anything with it. And then we just get this really white, sterile aesthetic, and it just isn't as fun as the vibrant looks of some of these other movies. And so we get this location they don't do anything with, and it just doesn't really work. There are some solid kills. There's one involving a window breaking that was, I thought it was the best in the movie. But this just feels like where we start going off the rails. Where we went off the rails in Seed of Chucky, but then it came back a little more, was a little more simple. But then this one where we start getting multiple Chucky dolls and some soul splintering just goes too far. And all the returning characters from some of the original movies that Curse set up, I feel like the direction they take them in this movie just doesn't do them any service, and it kind of just shocks you that they're even in the movie. Where Andy and Tiffany, it didn't really help their characters being in there. It just, they threw them in for the cameos. And the post-credit scene in this movie just feels like, how do we recapture what the post-credit scene did in Curse of Chucky? And it falls flat. It's better than Seed of Chucky, but like, still wouldn't really recommend it. It's not a good horror movie. And then we have Child's Play 2019, the remake of the original movie. And this kind of stands out in the franchise because all these movies come together to tell this big story. And there's some that are standalone, obviously. Most are. But this movie truly connects in no way to any other of these movies. Hasn't had a sequel yet, so, and probably never will. It just really stands by itself. And that's fun. It's kind of nice to have a Chucky movie where we don't have as many of the preset rules and stuff it has to follow, but it just really feels lifeless compared to the franchise, where when you make it an AI and not the soul of this killer, it just feels I mean, it's just not as fun with the robot delivering these lines. There's only one memorable line in the whole movie about Tupac. Yeah, and even that, it's more just random. Where Chucky has some solid one-liners in the other movies. This one just feels like a robotic delivery, and that's not Mark Hamill's fault. It's just, I mean, he's not Brad Dourif's Chucky, and you can't expect him to be. So it's not the most fair comparison. It's a well-made movie, but kind of just feels like a generic horror movie we'd get nowadays, like Megan. So it just doesn't have the life of some of these other movies where it just, there's something special about those early Chucky movies that they're just really fun, energetic slashers, where this just feels like, just takes away the fun. It's just a solid enough slasher. And it has some fun additions where Audrey Plaza, Bryant, and Tyree Henry, it's fun to see them in a Chucky movie, but it just doesn't really feel like a Chucky movie. And the doll design is pretty bad, and I don't understand what they were doing at the end with the different models of the doll. It just kind of was a mess, and fine enough, but probably would never rewatch it. If you want to watch Child's Play, just watch the original movie. It's far superior. Next up is Chucky Season 2, and I thought this was a disappointing follow-up to the first season. The first season was a lot of fun and a great reintroduction to Chucky, some of our OG characters. It was a good introduction to our new characters, and I'll get more into all that later. But it just feels like this is more bleak. It puts our OG characters in terrible places where if you're a fan of some of the original movies or even some of the later ones, you're not going to like where they put these characters. It's not satisfying, and it doesn't really all come together well either. We get Glenn Glenda back, and what happens with their character doesn't really go anywhere. Nika, Andy, their characters are pretty much wasted in here. We get a Tiffany plotline in a whole Tiffany-centric episode. That did not work at all. We didn't need a party about her trying to cover up a murder when she has dinner guests coming over. That was pretty ridiculous. And that's just the problem. There's way too many ideas, and it goes way too far with them. Like, we get like cyber enhancements almost, without going into too many details, that feel really out of place in the franchise. Just feels like Don Mancini had way too many ideas, and he wanted to do all of them. Also, I don't really like the setting of this Catholic boarding school. It feels like they don't even really utilize it. Where if you're going to have a season set at a Catholic boarding school, you would do something with it, and they don't really. It's just a place that forces our trio to be here and not in Hackensack. And I don't know, just kind of a weird, the way they get them there, like the plot line in the first episode with Jake's foster brother was really dark and weird. Just feels like they went way too over the top with this season. The multiple Chucky plotline having different like levels of Chucky, where we got spy Chuckies, we got super strong Chuckies, we got Chuckies that are like at like top rank of other Chuckies. It just really weird choice, and obviously lets Brad Dourif have some fun with the voices, and that's enjoyable, but just goes way too far. And a lot of the ideas are just, I don't understand how they got some of these ideas. Where same with Seed of Chucky, Don Mancini just gets the idea and he writes down all the ideas he has and doesn't cut any. And it just, this whole season becomes, like I said on a lot of the other ones below this, a mess. But I think the trio's a lot of fun, and I think the kills are really solid. So that makes it better than the movies below it, but just, yeah, kind of a disappointing season to follow up the first. And now we have Child's Play 3. And it's fun because after complaining about a lot of the settings for the previous Chucky movies and shows, this one is a fun setting where we get a military camp, and then it kind of leads into a fair setting for part of the movie, and I think those are fun ideas. I think that the movie is cool catching up with Andy later, but I really don't think they should have pushed this movie out so close to the second one, because we all want to see Alex Vincent as Andy. And the new guy, he's solid, but I mean, Alex Vincent is Andy, and this is the only project where he isn't, so just feels kind of off. And a lot of the new characters, and not even the ones that you're not supposed to like there's some characters that are obviously more antagonistic towards Andy. Obviously, you don't really like those characters, but some of the ones were supposed to like Tyler and Whitehurst. I just genuinely didn't care what was happening to these characters. And the romance subplot was fine, I guess. It kind of came out of nowhere to me. And it's kind of a weird movie where I love all of Chucky has some great kills, some great one-liners, great quips where it's a lot of fun. Chucky is probably just as fun as the first two movies, but this one it has some weird ideas where you get this like weird barber character that's really uncomfortable with his relationship to the kids in this school. And then we get this weird plot line, and I love it how weird it is. It's so stupid and it's so much fun, but I mean, you cannot seriously think that paintball guns can have their bullets switched to actual live rounds. That's not how it works at all. It's almost too stupid. But like when you know this movie's stupid, you can have some silly fun with it. But definitely not like a great movie. Not probably not even a good movie, but it's fun and watchable, solid enough. So worth checking out, but definitely nowhere near the heights of this franchise. And next up, we have the newest entry to this list, which is Chucky Season 3. And I thought this got us more on track than Season 2 did. It was a more fun season. I like the White House being part of the series, but I don't know. I liked Chucky in there, but I didn't like a lot of the other characters' plots inside of it, where we get some covering up of what's going on between the First Lady and this agent character we have in there. And I thought that plot line was pretty bad. Like, it dragged every time we cut to it. I was waiting to go back to the trio or to Devin Saw was president character, he was really good as that character. I thought that was really interesting. And the new kids were fine, but obviously it's just most of the time we have our trio interacting with Chucky. Some of the banter between Chucky and Devin in particular was really funny. I liked how the trio had stuff to do, but it felt like they kind of had to find reasons for them to have these things, where it feels like Jake and Devin don't get much to do until the end, and you wrote themselves into a corner with having Chucky in the White House, because how are these three random kids supposed to get into the White House? So when they're in the main plot, eventually it's fun to have them there, but definitely feels like they're trying to find ways to connect them to the story than naturally would happen. But overall, it's fun. I think it goes a little too far. Like I said, Don Mancini loves his random ideas. So, I mean, this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but just a little thing. I don't think we needed ghosts of past presidents in there. I don't think we really needed the ghost aspect at all. I think that the ending goes in a weird direction, especially when obviously they're not sure if they're going to get a fourth season, because our little ending has Chucky pleading to the audience to renew it for a fourth season. So I think it was a weird way to end it if you're not even sure you're going to get another season. But and I'm also fascinated to see where it goes, because the way they set up another season, it's going to be interesting. How are you going to have that show led with where our characters? No spoilers, but it's going to be interesting what happens. But Brad Dourif, I liked how he had more to do this season. I thought his performance was really good, and the Chucky aging storyline, won't go into details on it, was definitely interesting and a new thing for the character. But why do we have a Damballa doctor that people are visiting? That was just dumb. But yeah, not amazing, not great, just solid season. And next up is Curse of Chucky. And on this list, I'd say this is where we start getting to the good, where the previous ones on this list they go from terrible to solid enough. This is the first one on the list, I would say, genuinely good, where I really appreciate that they take the series back to the horror roots of the original. Chucky's very scary in this movie, and overall, it's definitely positive. The one nitpick I'll say is it takes a bit to get into the Chucky stuff, where they want to have the whole mystery side of it for our characters. So it takes a little bit for Chucky to be revealed and start being the little menace that we know and love. But when we do get that, it's definitely entertaining. So I'd say the second half is stronger than the first. And yeah, there's some really just unlikable characters, like the sister that hold this one back a little bit. Where Chucky movies, you want to have these likable characters, and you want to have the ones that you want Chucky to come after. But this one just kind of feels like such a real situation with a character who other characters telling she can't take care of herself. Her mom just passed away, and just like people like speaking for her. It just feels so real. So the unlikable characters, they don't feel like over the top comical people you want to get taken out, like the barber in the third movie. It just feels like these are like there are people like this out here, so it makes it a little more just uncomfortable situation. And I just it's hard for to Nika's just really become the punching bag of this franchise. So it's kind of hard seeing like where she goes in some of these movies, and this is the start of that direction. So not the most satisfying anyway, and I think it breaks a few too many of the rules of the franchise where they set up how Chucky is slowly becoming a human, and he's in this doll body for a bit, and it feels like they just let that go, and from this point on, it feels like that's when we start losing the rules. But this is where it really starts happening. So that's kind of a lame thing. And but the post credit scene, really good and solid movie. It's good, and I think that if Curse had led into a better cult, I think that maybe would have been higher up on this list. But the way they set up the next one and how the ball gets dropped, the cliffhangers we kind of get in this movie just don't feel as rewarding. Next, we have Bride of Chucky, and this movie really surprised me. I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the sillier aspects of the Chucky franchise, and this is one of the movies I waited to watch for a while, where I'd seen the first two seasons of the TV show, seen the original three, I'd seen Curse and Cult, but I hadn't seen Bride or Seed or the remake. So I was a little worried where the second season of the TV show goes that this was going to be all that and just be way too silly, but it was actually a lot of fun. I thought the silly elements really added to the story. Tiffany is a great addition to the franchise, and this is when they still knew what to do with her character because obviously, like I've touched on, some of the Tiffany stuff in the show is not very good. It feels like this is they knew what to do with the character. She was a good foil to Chucky where she was urging him to get more creative with some of the kills. I thought that was a lot of fun. You definitely feel the Andy Barkley hole in this movie where the first three were all about Chucky going after him. So it feels a little bit you miss him a bit. And I feel like they do a good job though where the human characters in this, they're good characters, but the movie knows you're here for Chucky and Tiffany too. So those are our leads. But we have these human characters that complement the couple really well. We have another couple that's more of the opposite of what Chucky and Tiffany are, and that makes for some fun. I do think though that there's some continuity problems in this movie where the whole amulet stuff, where you can switch souls if you have this amulet. It's really weird because if Chucky knew where the amulet was the whole time, why did he just go after Andy the entire first three movies? It obviously maybe he wanted revenge, but they made it pretty clear that he needed Andy's body. So it's just really weird that they introduced this, and then the amulet is completely gone in future movies, and they can still do the switching souls. So it's just really weird. If you establish that you can only switch souls into the person that you first revealed yourself around, and then that rule is just gone in later movies, it definitely is a weird choice. But overall, this is a fun movie. It's really enjoyable, and I like the road trip aesthetic. And I think it's a really fun idea to have these human characters that are taking the blame for Chucky's actions. And it just it's a fun movie overall. Third place is season one of Chucky, and this was a really good restart to the franchise where we had we had Cult, and that didn't do too well, and it was still in the direct to DVD cycle of these movies. And before that, we had Seed, which sent the movies direct to DVD. This feels like we were more mainstream and a little better budget, I felt. And so that's a lot of fun. I think the new characters that I touched on when I talked about the other seasons, they're a great addition. Our trio is just a lot of fun. But the way our trio gets together when you go back to this first season is pretty weird. Like Lexi's level of bullying that we get in this first season is like off the charts. And the fact that where her character ends up is shocking. How close they get after just I don't want to spoil what how she bullies him because it ties into another plot line, but that's pretty brutal stuff there. So that was kind of wild when you look back on it and how good friends they become. But the kills are very fun in this one. It feels like they were very creative, have some really intense sequences, and I feel like it just was this was really fun where it doesn't take itself too seriously, doesn't go over the line in silliness. I do think that the whole Tiffany and Nika storyline wasn't really necessary. I think honestly, if you save that for season two and had that as Tiffany's storyline in season two versus what we did get that didn't work at all, I think that would be better. But just as it is, I feel like Tiffany's just shoehorned into this series and none of her storylines really work great. But the kids are great. It's really fun seeing Devin Sawa take on a different role all the time in this franchise. He's just so good, and you can tell he loves being there. But yeah, this was a series I was with since day one. I remember watching the premiere and getting really into it. I feel like it was a fun mystery. It was a good build up, and it was just a really fun show. It's definitely something where it makes you want to keep watching week to week, but it is a little disappointing where the later seasons went. But still, I think this is a relatively simple, fresh, and just overall fun season. And in second place is the original Child's Play. And this is such an interesting movie to watch nowadays because when you view this franchise, we know how Chucky becomes this wisecracking, crazy little doll flying around. But it's really interesting how this first movie really has a mystery of whether Andy's the one behind these murders. Is it Chucky? What's really going on? And so it plays really interesting now, and I'm be fascinated to know what did people think when this movie first came out? Did anyone actually believe that Andy was the killer? I really think that the reboot should have gone that direction, had Andy be the killer and had a red herring and it would differentiate itself from this original, but obviously they didn't go that way. But yeah, this is just a really fun slasher movie. Has more of an 80s vibe to it than some of these other ones where relatively simple and just has a more confined final showdown where some of these get really over the top, get all these kind of special effects and stuff. This one just pretty simple. One doll they're trying to get and just in an apartment. Just has some really fun sequences in the car with our detective character. The first time Chucky's revealed to Karen is that's a memorable scene for sure. And it's just really fun to see the origin of this franchise. It's probably the best made movie in this franchise, where obviously there's one I enjoy more and one I think is more fun. But just filmmaking wise, it's really done well. Tom Holland's good director. And yeah, it's just really solid movie and kickstarted a very fun franchise. And yeah, it's makes for a fun rewatch. First place for me is Child's Play 2. And out of this franchise, this is easily the one I have the most fun with. I think Chucky's lines are the most funny in this movie. His kills are very memorable. I don't think any kill in this franchise comes close to topping the ball pump and yardstick kill. That is that's a standout for me. And Chucky's lines in particular, I love when his "How's it hanging, Phil" line is pretty great. It just it's just a lot of fun. This movie, it's has a really short runtime, so it never drags. It does a good job of establishing Chucky earlier, where the first movie, part of what's great about that one is we have this building tension of is it truly Chucky? This one, right off the bat, you know it's Chucky, and he gets right to killing, and it's a lot of fun. I feel like Alex Vincent, he was good in the first one, even better in this one. I really like the introduction of Kyle, and this movie just does such a great job of introducing these characters that are just so annoying that you are excited to see Chucky go after them. Where this foster dad, they don't try to make him this complicated, layered character. He's just this annoying guy, and you know Chucky's coming for him. So it's just a lot of fun just watching that go down. The third act, easily the best in the franchise. The company headquarters where the good guy dolls are getting manufactured makes for such a fun showdown. It's really interesting how they utilize some of these different contraptions and the way they fight Chucky. It's just so much fun. I think this is a really fun slasher movie. This feels like peak Chucky to me, where if I think about Chucky in his prime, I just think about this movie. And if I'm gonna rewatch Chucky, I would definitely go with this one. it's just a blast. And Brad Dourif, obviously, he's great as this character, and I think this is his best performance as Chucky. And yeah, this is a very fun movie. Very, very fun to watch a horror icon at its peak. So, highly recommend Child's Play 2. Please let me know in the comments how you would rank the Chucky movies and seasons. Do you have a favorite kill line of Chucky's? Let me know all that. And please like and subscribe.